I'm Shane Snow. I'm the co-founder of a company here in New York called Contently. I'm also an author and a journalist. I write about innovation, and I have with me here Kyle Doerksen, who's an inventor of something that is called the OneWheel that we're going to show off.
Absolutely.
So this session is called Lateral Innovation because I have been obsessed for the last few years about something that psychologists call lateral thinking, and that we, since the 80s, have been thinking about with MacGyver. Lateral thinking is an alternative way of approaching problems or creating things. It's looking at things from a different perspective, a non-logical perspective, and this is something that has become somewhat of a movement now in internet culture with the life hacking thing. A lot of lateral thinking has to do with repurposing tools or ideas for something other than its intended purpose. So I have up here on the screen a can opener, because this is the best thing that you can use to open a package of headphones from Radio Shack. There's terrible blister pack packaging that you can never rip open. A can opener is the best thing you can use. This is an example of something that some clever person on the internet came up with, of a way to repurpose a tool for something other than its intended purpose. So that's the reason why we're sitting here. I wrote a book about this, about lateral thinking and the way this breakthroughs happen when people look at problems from different perspectives, both in the arts and sciences and in business. And today we're going to talk about something that kind of combines all of those things. That's at the intersection of all of those. So if you look at the history of board sports, this is a rough chronology of the board sports, or the kind of the mobile sports that are out there. First there were surfboards, and a long time ago in Hawaii, we had roller skates and skateboards and snowboards and roller blades and wakeboards. And then we had this, which came along, the Segway, which was an attempt to add technology to mobile, sort of personal mobility. And it didn't do so well until it came back, I guess, with Joe Bluth on Arrested Development. Although they still make a lot of money, they still sell a lot of Segways, right?
Yeah, and Segway was recently acquired by a Chinese company, which is very interesting.
Right, because in China, this idea of applying technology to personal mobility is starting to take off.
Because people are hacking their lives, there, where a little electric transportation gadget can make up for endless traffic snarls and bans on various kinds of other vehicles, help people get where they need to go.
So there's a little bit of lateral thinking going on in China around these devices, but what happens if you take the Segway, which was largely sort of here in the West seen as a sort of a failed innovation, and you make a love child between that and a skateboard? What you get is something like this.
This is the factory in San Jose, California, where we actually build OneWheels. Here we are in the iconic streets of San Francisco, having a little fun, riding around town. So the way OneWheel works, obviously, is you just lean to your front foot and it accelerates. You lean back to slow down. You may not be doing these tricks on your first ride, but it is actually really easy to learn. So in under 5 minutes, most people are up and riding on it.
So I discovered the OneWheel when I was walking down a street in Dublin at another conference, and I saw these guys giving demos to people, including Tony Hawk. And so a friend of mine stopped me and said, "Tony Hawk's here, there's this thing," and I stood on it. And I've been riding boards for a long time. I grew up skateboarding and snowboarding, but I stood on it thinking it would be wobbly and hard to control as a new board, and I was surprised that it balances for you. It actually controls your balance without you having to use your muscles, really.
Yeah, the core of the technology that's in here is a processor that's running algorithms that we developed. It's looking at all these angles using gyro and accelerometer sensors, and then it's calculating how to run a motor that's built into the hub of the wheel to help keep you balanced. So it might look like an endo board or a bongo board, which those are intentionally difficult. This is, we've got the computer to solve that, and so all you really need to do is lean whichever way you want to go.
So, and one of the cool things, so I ended up writing a story about this for Wired Magazine, which was how we ended up getting connected. And for this story, they had me ride through the snowy streets of New York on a board, which you can't do with a skateboard. So it was almost like snowboarding the streets of New York.
Yeah.
So this is basically an invention. It's the first invention of this kind in years, a new, I guess, a new kind of personal.
It's really, yeah, it's really a new form of transportation, right? And we think about innovation, we're often thinking about iteration, right? A new car is like 98% the same as last year's model. There's just a little bit of changing around the edges. With this, it was really a blank sheet of paper, and trying to figure out, as you're saying, what other industries and places we could borrow from to put something like this together.
Cool. So I don't know how long actually the video goes.
About 20 more seconds.
About 20 more seconds. Okay, so we can ride it out. So the thing that's interesting to me about what you guys have done with the OneWheel. So this first was a Kickstarter project. After years of Kyle thinking about this and tinkering in your garage, and you drew inspiration in order to solve this problem of how do you make a board that balances on one wheel and feels like a hoverboard, feels like a snowboard. You drew inspiration from a very unlikely source, which was aerospace. You talk about the quest to create the story behind creating this product.
Yeah, so I mean, the aerospace industry developed control systems in the 1960s when jet aircraft became too unstable for pilots to actually control just by using the stick and rudder movements. And so, when I was in college studying engineering, we learned kind of the basics of that. And originally, I was tinkering in my garage with two things in mind. One was trying to really understand control systems and sort of a build to learn, build to think kind of process. The other was to create the feeling of snowboarding on powder. I grew up near the Canadian Rockies, and every winter I just loved snowboarding. And those moments where you'd come off the kind of scratchy groom trail and onto a big powder field that was almost impossibly smooth. That was the feeling I was trying to create riding around town.
So you tried a lot of things, I guess, to recreate this feeling. What did you try?
Yeah, so it's not like this was ever a four-wheeled skateboard, and then one day we decided to get rid of the other three. It was always this sort of form factor, the idea that there must be a way to package the motor in the hub and make it balance. And so trying to find like exactly the right tire. Too wide and you can't turn. You can only go straight. Too narrow and it's impossibly wobbly. Trying to find the right motor controllers. We looked in the robotics industry. We looked at the electric bike industry. We looked at hobby equipment, like is in drones that are flying around now. None of those work. So we actually had to create our own motor controller from scratch, basically, in order to get this thing running.
So I think I have here a schematic of this board. When you look at it here on the stage, it looks like a go-kart wheel and a plank of wood. But talk about what's going on inside of here.
Yeah, I mean, so to your point, the technology in OneWheel is sort of deeply hidden, and I'm loath to compare anything to the iPhone, but
I brought it up earlier.
There is an element of the technology being so subtle, so intuitive that you don't really need to know anything about it in order to operate it. And so, but to dive into the tech for a minute, what we have are lithium batteries under one foot pad. The control electronics are under the other foot pad. And this very special kind of motor is packaged into the hub of the wheel. So there's no gears, there's no belts, there's no chains, there's no maintenance, right? It's totally sealed in there. And then the secret sauce are really the algorithm. So there's an ARM processor in here, and 14,000 times a second, it's calculating exactly how to drive the motor in order to keep you balanced. It's also talking to your iPhone, which is talking to the cloud and opens up some other really cool possibilities.
So I was really surprised so I bought one of these so I could write the story about it. And it was cool, it was great, and then we were going to meet up when Kyle's team was here in New York, and they sent an email and said, update your OneWheel. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And so the instructions were, get your iPhone and connect to your OneWheel through Bluetooth, and you can update the firmware. So basically the algorithm of how it turns, and it was suddenly smoother. I was able to turn more precisely.
Faster, smoother, better carving. Those are all things that we improved in the last firmware upgrade. So it's really interesting because people are used to buying a product and having it sort of degrade over time. But with electric vehicles, Tesla is leading this charge, and all kinds of connected things. We can actually improve them, make them better over time.
So when the iPhone came out, again to use the analogy that you're loath to use, when the iPhone came out, it was a phone that changed the whole cellular industry, the whole world, and it was created by a computer company at a time when only telecommunication companies made phones. And it wasn't a huge stretch for us to say, okay, yes, Apple can make a phone, but applying the paradigms of the computing industry to cellular phones was what changed that. And now, something that we were talking about, when you're buying a car, you don't necessarily, or a bike, you don't necessarily say, well, maybe maybe the 2016 model of this car is going to be so much better because there's incremental improvement. But when you buy a phone, you totally have that conversation, and now you're applying that same thing here, only with the cloud, right? If you buy a car, you buy a board, you can update it on the fly, and it can be the software that actually changes.
Exactly, and unlock new functionality, new capability, which is awesome.
Yeah, so we're trying to be quick because we have a couple more speakers left. I wanted to ask, before we ask you to actually ride this thing in front of everyone and maybe give some
That's
rides
gonna be the
outside.
best part.
Kelly Slater and Tony Hawk both rode this board. Who is better at it?
Kelly Slater, who's the world's best surfer, pretty unanimously, was probably better than Tony. So I'm throwing down the gauntlet. Tony Hawk, show us what he can do.
So maybe if they watch this video, we can organize some sort of a
Yeah,
race
one thing that's really cool is that people who have deep experience in board sports, whether it's snow or skate or wake or whatever it is, they hop on here and those skills transfer. So they become really great riders right away. And the progression is really there. A lot of, there's no progression in Segway riding. You're not like, oh, so-and-so's a great Segway rider. Like, that doesn't exist, right? But with this, there is, and that's a consistent theme in board sports. Like, everybody kind of knows at the surf break, like, oh, so-and-so's a really good surfer. Like, it's just amazing to watch them ride. And, we have the same thing going on here. And really what we're trying to do is not just create a new kind of vehicle, but a new board sport.
Well, that was what I was going to say. One last thing is, this could be seen as a toy or a sport or new transportation or a way to sort of go green. How is it that you think of the future, like what this has an impact on the future?
Yeah, so we really see it as using the board sports aspect to get into the transportation world. Almost nobody sells a transportation product strictly on the basis of its transportation, merits. It's always based on the story, the enjoyment, how it reflects on your values, all these things.
Whether you're getting a Hyundai or a Ford, it's sort of the lifestyle.
Exactly, it's all about the lifestyle. And so, we are really focusing on getting great riders on the board, riding interesting terrain, creating videos like we saw here that really opens people's minds to what you can do with this. And then, sneakily, we're getting in there with, a carbon-free, form of transportation for the last mile or last several miles.
Very cool. So I think that if we got BMW and Sonic Motion to go all in together on the OneWheel, we could create sort of like the mega transportation of the future.
It's definitely going to be a big part of the mix. I think one of the other cool things about this product is the intermodal kind of nature of it. So I previously started an electric bike company as well, and electric bikes are really neat, but they struggle from the same problem with regular bikes, which is what do you do with them at either end of your journey? Do you lock them out outside where they get stolen? You can't really put them in your car unless you take them apart. You can't really take them on the train unless there's like a special car or something like that. Whereas vehicles that are this small, you just pick them up and take them with you. And so, you can have a car that you drive, but then you park it 2 miles away from your office, and you pop out and you ride this and enjoy those last couple miles. And we're getting feedback from our customers that that's exactly what they're doing.
Very cool. All right, so 2 minutes left. Let's stand on the board without turning it on so people can see the balance issue, and then turn it on, and you can ride away.
All right, well, I'm going to put my helmet on. If we're going to do it off here first. See if this works with the mic. So with it off, it's actually super sketchy. So Shane put me up to this. Obviously, you can't do anything with it off. It just immediately falls to either side. So I just pressed a little switch on the side here. I stand on it. I come up to level, and whichever way I lean, I go that way.
It has taillights and headlights so people can see you in the dark.
So that is OneWheel.
So, all right, so there you have it, the future of mobility part 2. Thank you, Kyle, for showing up.
Thanks, Shane. I'm going to go for a little bit longer ride over here just to show you how it works.